Hi there, my name is Abigail Thompson and I work at White Bear Center for the Arts, and I'm also a practicing artist. I have a degree in art and art history, and my medium, or the type of materials I use to make art, is photography. So today we are going to make an art series using only the camera on your phone. It sounds really odd, but actually camera phone art is becoming increasingly popular as artists are trying to find new ways to express themselves using technology that's accessible. So no expensive professional cameras needed. You can use any type of camera. I'm using an iPhone 8 to demonstrate today, but you can use any device that has a camera. So today we're going to be covering a few topics: how a camera functions, brainstorming, practicing with a still life, composition and shooting, and editing. So at the end of this video, you should be well equipped to go out and make your own art series using only the camera on your phone. So let's start with the basics of how a camera functions. This graphic is a great explanation of how a camera works. No need to memorize it, just look at it while I go over it. So I'm just going to briefly go over how a camera works so that you know what's happening automatically with the lens on your phone. So aperture, which is the top, is the size of your lens opening, kind of like your pupil. The smaller the hole is, the more in focus everything you see will be. So let's look at an example. If you wanted everything to be in focus, like the picture on the left, you'd use a very high f-stop, like f32. If you wanted only the front to be in focus and the background to be blurry, you'd use a very low aperture, like f1.4. Numbers are what you change on a digital or film camera. Again, there's no need to memorize this since your phone does this automatically, but over time this will become effortless. Let's look at shutter. So the way that shutter works is like your eyelid over your eye. The faster it closes, the more motion it stops. The slower it closes, the blurrier it will be. Just like this graphic. So when you have a fast shutter speed, it will stop the motion, and if you have a slow shutter speed, the motion will be blurred. ISO means how sensitive your pupil will be to the light, the pupil being your lens. If you are outside and you have lots of light coming into the pupil, you'll want a low ISO, like 200. You'll have lots of light and low grain. If you're shooting in the dark and you don't have a lot of light to work with, use a higher ISO. It will produce more grain, but it allows you to shoot in lower light situations. So now these three ideas work together. But the best way to think about these ideas is to practice them. Try different lighting situations, try changing the controls if you have that ability. Some newer smartphones, you can change these values. If you can't, no worries, most cannot. Mine definitely cannot. But knowing how a camera functions, regardless if you can change it or not, is a really important step in the process. So a phone camera does this automatically. For example, if you're shooting in bright daylight with your phone, things look pretty clear and you can see the details pretty well. If you shoot at night, you get a more blurry, pixelated image. So that is the ISO helping you out. Alright, so now let's start creating. I'm going to start by walking you through my own basic creative process. I also want to point out this is an outline, and many artists do whatever feels the best for them. So this is just a place to get started. The first thing I do when I want to create art is I brainstorm. My advice is to write down every idea that pops into your head, no matter how practical or doable it is. The Notes app on my phone is full of ideas, words, phrases, feelings, lots of just random stuff. And you'll never really know when inspiration strikes. So for me, it's usually the middle of the night, on a walk, at dinner, usually in class. I would write my ideas on the margins of my notes. So just jotting down every idea that comes to mind. I also carry around, in addition to my phone notes app, I use a little journal where I can expand on those ideas. So that is what you're going to want to do next. You're going to want to expand on those ideas that you were brainstorming. Take that one word or sentence or feeling and write about it in length. Go for as long as you can. Write about your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and definitely don't hold back. You're the only one that's going to see this. If you're stuck, do some reading about the subject that you're interested in. Keep yourself going through that process. If you're still stuck and you're really having a hard time, no worries. Look at other artists. Use the internet. Look up famous or not famous artists and read about their work. Go to their websites and look at their artist statements and look at all of their art and learn from their perspectives. You are definitely allowed to use other artists as inspiration. So, a photographic art series for someone just learning is about 4 to 10 photographs, but feel free to make one photo or even 20 photos if you're really inspired, whatever you're comfortable with. So once you're done shooting, go ahead and print them, hold a gallery in your home, or you could also do an online gallery over social media with your work, or you can just keep them to yourself. When you're done with making your art, write a bit about how you got there, the feelings, the brainstorming, the research, and what you're really aiming to convey to people with your art, what you really want to say with your art. And feel free to explore creating photos for an art series, but also know that you have the freedom to just make art without any process. Sometimes the best way to make art is definitely spontaneous, so do whatever feels best for you. Okay, now let's start creating some art with our phones. The first concept that I want to talk about is composition. This is probably one of the most important parts about making a photograph. Composition is the way that you choose to arrange things in your photograph with your own artistic vision. So let's talk about what you want to shoot and how. So for this class, I will be using still lifes, objects, people, and landscapes to show you kind of how to compose different subjects. But right now, I am thinking a lot about summer heat myself, so I'm going to make a little mini series about my feelings and my visualizations of heat. So let's say you're not ready to photograph a person and you're not quite comfortable with your camera yet. We're going to practice with a still life, and still lifes are basically just an arrangement of objects. Painters have been doing still lifes to showcase their skills for centuries, so let's borrow their idea to get a little bit more comfortable. So the way to set up is really easy. You just drape a shirt or a sheet over a chair and put a hard surface on the chair next to a source of natural light and arrange your objects. So now let's start shooting. I have my objects placed here, and you'll see that when you click on the photograph, you get a yellow box with a sun that comes up for iPhones. If yours is different, no worries. Just make sure that nothing is too bright in your photograph or too dark. I'm using my finger to slide up and down on the brightness, and if there's an area that's too bright, like in the bottom right-hand corner, you just click or you tap your finger on that spot that's too bright and your phone will correct itself. It'll correct the exposure. So now you can try different angles. You can try shooting from above, you can try shooting at eye level, you can try from the sides. I'm going to go with a little bit more cropped in so that you can't see anything on the outside around it. So you just find the frame that you want to make sure the exposure is good, and start experimenting with your shots. So I've chosen objects that reflect my experience with the heat: dead flowers, speckled bananas, and ripe peaches. So choose things that are related to your ideas. Here's the final product. Now let's move on to photographing people. So the first thing you want to think about when you're shooting is the background. So right now I've got a lamp post and someone's patio furniture in the background that I don't want while shooting. So I'm going to adjust the angles to make sure that I do not have that in the background. Change scenery if it's not what you want. If your neighbor's car is in the photo, or there's a carpet that you don't like, or there's lighting that you don't like, make sure that you move your person and change your angles to fit exactly what you want in the photo. Everything in the photo should be completely intentional. So lighting is probably one of the most important features of your photograph. One thing that people make a mistake on is shooting with a light that isn't going to give you the most details. So if you want the most details, shoot with the light facing them. This is backlit, where the light is behind them. This will hide details, and when you try to fix the exposure, like I'm doing right now, the image becomes dark and the person is unseeable. So try to light them from the front so that the sun is facing them, and find a good time to shoot that's right for your artistic vision. I'm going for a hazier, softer look, so I'm going in the sunset, afternoon. If you want a direct, more bright light, go earlier, around noon. So let's talk about the rule of thirds. Basically, if you have your grid up on your camera, the most important focal point, which is her face for me, should be at one of the points or the intersections of the grid. And remember, this is just a guideline. It's not a set in stone rule. So feel free to use it if it helps, but if not, feel free to experiment. When you're deciding where to place your subject on your composition, consider what your viewer will see. What do you want them to notice first? If it's your subject, put them in the front of the frame. Make them big, make them the center of attention. If you don't want them to be center of attention, pull the camera away and let the surrounding background and foreground, which is where these leaves are in the front top, take over the image. Then you can experiment, find interesting angles, break the rule of thirds, follow the rule of thirds, find your own technique, or take inspiration from other artists. Do whatever feels the best for your vision. Mainly, how do you want to tell your story? How do you want to visualize it in your head? Go for it. So now I'm shooting one of my series photographs, and I wanted a lush, overgrown background and for my subject to be blocking out the light with her hand. So try different angles to get the shot that you want. Really decide how you're going to tell a story with this image. The way that you compose your image is really important for the viewer's emotions. A balanced, centered image like this one is more relaxing, organized, and pleasing, whereas a non-centered photo like this one will be disorienting, confusing, and chaotic. If you decide to shoot indoors, the mechanics are basically the same. Find lighting near a window. Find a really good source of light and shoot there. Remember about backlighting, that near a window it can be pretty tough unless you want a silhouette. Silhouettes are when the light comes in and completely shadows the person so you can only see their outline. Make sure the background is intentional, the same with outside. Be patient and make sure everything is exactly how you want it. It might take a while, but it really is worth it. The best advice I have for landscape photography is to go for a walk. Find interesting pockets of light, nature, scenes, parking lots, and it doesn't necessarily have to be beautiful scenery. For example, this mattress was on the side of a road covered in dirt. It's not traditionally beautiful, but it is now transformed through photography. So landscape photos also do not have to be merely documentary. You can definitely bring your own props, subject, lighting, and manipulate the landscape without even touching it. So let's go through how I edited this photograph. I will be using the app Snapseed, which is a free app that works with both Apple and Android phones. First, upload the photo you want to edit. When you click Tools on the bottom middle right, you get a huge menu of tools. The first tool that we're going to use is Crop, on the second row on the left. I like my photos to be 4x5, but the most important idea of cropping is to get exactly the size and frame that you want. Crop out anything that you don't like. Then we're going to use the Tune Image tool, which is right above the Crop tool. From here you can slide your finger right or left to add more or less of whatever value is highlighted. So my staple changes are brightness, contrast, which amplifies the difference between tones in the image. Try it out. And saturation, which changes how strong colors are in the photo. So now I'll just show you what changing those values does to this photograph. So first we have contrast, adding more and less by sliding your finger right or left, and the saturation, which is either more color or less color. So highlights changes the lightest portions of your photo. If a spot is too bright, try turning down the highlights. Shadows is the opposite. If you want the darker spots to be darker or lighter, change the shadows. Lastly, there's warmth. This changes how warm the colors are in a photo. A warm photo will have more orange and a cool photo will have more blues. Let's do a fun edit now. Let's play around with double exposure. Double exposure just means that you're layering two photos together. First, it will ask you to upload a picture, and you can upload the same picture or a different one. I want my picture to look dizzy, so I'm going to upload the same photo and choose Overlay in the exposure options, or the middle icon that looks like a tent. Next, you can change opacity, or how see-through you want the top photo to be by clicking the water droplet icon and sliding the scale. Play around with the position of the top photo. Try different exposure types from the tent icon and experiment with different types of photos.
Let's try a black and white edit too. The black and white icon on Snapseed looks like a box, and it's on the middle row on the right side. Tap the tent icon and try different filters. Once you have found one that you like, click the middle icon and adjust the values like you did before with tuning the image. So change the brightness levels. You can also change something called grain, which is really fun. It can be fun. Try adding a bit of texture with grain, and that is it. So here is my completed camera phone series.